Now moving on to the factor-based question. Tanmay, please move to the next slide. Okay, now let's consider an example. Suppose you are selected as in Amazon in New York offices for a case interview round, and the interviewer asks you, "What are you thinking of putting a new distribution center somewhere in the Midwest? Where would you put it and why?" Please read the question once. Yeah, so what the first task is to understand what the statement means, breaking down it in a better understanding. So we are thinking of putting a new distribution center. They are deciding to put a new distribution center. Distribution center is basically the center from where, it's a center point of distribution. The seller sells their stuff to the Amazon distribution center, and it arrives there, and from there it gets distributed to all the customers who have ordered it from Amazon. Okay, and they are planning it to put that center in Midwest, in the Middle East, mid Western region. And where would you put it and why? So here, the interviewer is not asking the location, where would you put it and why you put it there. Basically, is asking what are the factors that you will consider while putting your distribution center, because you obviously won't be aware of the geometric, the geography of the region. So basically, just citing out the reasons or the factors that will affect the decision will be enough. So first of all, Ashwin, would you like to take up from here?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, to like Karthik explained very well that what are the kinds of factors that we need to consider, and to understand that we first need to understand the problem statement. So how will you clarify this problem statement? What are the questions that you will ask to understand the problem statement better and to narrow down the this very broad problem statement? What are the questions? Please write in the chat box. Okay. Where does Amazon get the most orders from in that region? Great. I think this is a good question. So
That is a
essentially,
really
what's
nice
the,
question.
yeah,
Nice.
I think it's a pretty good question. What's the target? We are thinking of putting a new distribution center, setting up a new distribution center somewhere in the Midwest. So where would you put it and why? There are two aspects to this. Where would you put it and why? So essentially, to select a location, we need to consider various factors in the location. That will be the second part. The first part is what are the first part is clarifying this particular question. And to clarify that, some good questions can be next slide, Tanmay. So some good questions can be that when Amazon receives a product in its warehouse, who pays for the shipping? This will help you understand the process flow. That what all is what's the supply chain? How's the supply? How does the supply chain look like? So who pays for the shipping? Is it the Amazon? Is it Amazon or is it the seller, the company who's selling that good? So here the interviewer might tell you to assume that the seller or the manufacturer of the product pays for shipping to Amazon. So another clarifying question can be that how many distribution centers Amazon has currently. So how many does it have in USA? How many it has in India? Since we are targeting about Midwest, I think you should ask that what all countries that the does Amazon's services cater to in the Midwest, and how many of them have distribution centers? How many distribution centers do they have in total? So questions like these. And so Amazon will tell you that they have 10 warehouses throughout the country in various places. Another question can be, has the sales of Amazon grown in a particular section of the country? I think if suppose if a particular country requires 2 or 3 distribution centers, but there's only one particular distribution center. So I think in that way that particular country will be underserved. There's a lot of more potential, untapped potential. So that will help you structure your case forward as you move forward. This was the step one to understand that clarifying question. I think we have more clarifying questions here. Transport availability and accessibility of terrain. Yes, but we'll consider this in the factors. So factors would include things like maybe labor costs and so what you many people are I've seen in the chat that many people are suggesting factors to consider. right? So transport availability is one of them, and economic and technology conditions, all of these cover are will be covered in the factors. And okay, another question is, this new distribution center will deliver in the country, or is it able to export from that country? Yes, I think this is another this can be one question, but what will this answer? I cannot really think of something direct. How will this directly help us narrow down the problem statement? I think this will help you understand the supply chain. That is one thing that can be done through this. So how are the services actually working? So it will help you do that. Okay. So moving on, next slide. Now we come to the factors. So this is, since it's a factor-based case, you need to consider various factors. Now this list should be somewhat MISI, so mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. You must be, I think, throughout this course, you will hear this word from our mouths hundreds of times. So this is very important. Here, when I talk about MISI, I mean that many factors, almost all factors should be covered, and all of these factors should be exclusive, should not be should not. I mean that there should not be an intersection between them. They should be exclusive from each other. One good factor is, what's the cost of land? So they'll have to acquire a huge piece of land in that particular country or in that region. So what's the cost of land? So we'd like to pick a spot where we can build a huge warehouse, and of course the conditions should be good. There, it should not be prone to many disasters, right? Things like that. Second would be, how business friendly is the state, in the sense that what are the policies of the government, how people are, how the government is or the local people are reacting to that, and I mean what's the government's policies regarding a foreign company setting up, or in fact for that matter an indigenous company setting up a huge distribution center or a warehouse. Third can be, what's the proximity? So is the location near major highways or railroads? And is the location really significant? Is the location strategic enough, right? And if it's in a famous town, or if it's in a place which is accessible to a lot of people, that will help. And infrastructure is critical. So when we talk about infrastructure, we are also talking about when the company sets up that distribution center, can the raw materials be easily shipped to the construction site? So that's another thing. Previous slide, Tanmay. Yeah, so another can be the kind of workforce. No, next slide. Factors considered to be considered. Yeah, so is there an educated workforce? So the workforce part, labor part is very, very important. In fact, this is not the order of priority that you may want to follow, but yeah, this is basically just to make the list exhaustive. This is one of the most important factors, that is the workforce. So are the people in that area unemployed? This will help, because if more people are unemployed, they would want to join the construction and the entire process, right? Next can be, what is the cost of living in that area, and is it an area where people would want to live? So when we talk about setting up a distribution center, it will set up an entire ecosystem around it. So it will set up, I mean, it will help people around it to get jobs. And if people are not located around that distribution center, they would want to come near that, settle near that place. And this might as well set up an entire city, as has been done by major companies in the past. So you can see a lot of records in the past which have a lot of companies have set up distribution centers in various places, and around that factory or around that distribution center or even a warehouse or something, an entire city has come up. One good example that a top of the head example is Ford, the first factory of Ford. So that's a good example. Yeah, so this answer is good, but I didn't take into consideration demographic forecasts and delivery by drones. So these delivery by drones and all of these things are specific cases, special cases. we are trying to make a generalized approach to solve this, right? And yeah, Amazon is a good so Amazon planned to deliver drones packages by drones, and that is they might not want to have a warehouse in a rural area, right? So if the warehouse is in a rural area, the accessibility from that rural area to cities might be difficult, and we might want to have a central location because drones have minimal range, right? So you just need to mention this point there. You need not consider this as such. You just need to mention that interviewer must know that you are thinking about that. You have that point in mind. So that would make your solution exhaustive. Right. Next, we can start with the IVK system. You've stopped sharing, Tanmay, I think. Any questions regarding this? How did the
Yeah, please.
first question help in deciding these factors? Okay, cost of land. Yeah, cost of land helps you understand. So you need to buy that land, right? Or you need to somewhat. I think yeah, buying is the only option that you have. You might want to rent it or something, but it will be for a very long time. So buying is a better option. So when you buy this huge piece of land, you might want to consider the cost of land. Texas, say for example, has cheap land available, but California or New York do not have the highest costs in the world, land costs. So you might want to set up a factory in Texas if you want to set up a distribution center there. I mean, not a factory, a distribution center there.
Bhaiya, I am asking about the shipping charges. Like,
Yes, I thought you were asking that. So about the if the sellers are covering the the transportation costs, or whether the company is covering the transportation costs, is a factor to decide whether they can be independent about the location or not. Suppose if the Amazon pays for the the delivery of the services by the seller, then they will keep in mind that they keep all the they keep their warehouse close to the distributor or the sellers. But right now, as the interviewer said that the interviewer said that you can assume the seller or manufacturer of the product pays for the shipping to Amazon. So that means they need not to worry about the location and the particular demographic of the of the warehouse, because the manufacturer or the seller are only covering the shipping cost. So that is why this point was important from that perspective. I hope it is clear, Sujit.
yeah, Bhaiya.
Any other questions, please?
Yeah, so proximity of sellers and product-based businesses is another very great factor. It will help you, it will indicate that what's the economic state of the region where you are planning to set up a distribution center. So it will help you identify that also. And what will GDP growth rate of country affect it? Yeah, so India is a growing country. Say, for example, we are not talking about India, we're talking about Midwest. But just let me, for the sake of an example, just let me quote the India example. So, India is a growing country. There's a huge scope for development, and companies want to invest in India because today, when they invest 10 rupees in some place in India, they'll maybe after 5 years or so they'll get 100 rupees. This is the kind of ROI that India would provide. So the GDP growth rate, India has a high GDP growth rate. Uh, I mean, let's consider the GDP growth rate before the pandemic. So that will really, that can be one of the factors which the company might want to consider. Why did Microsoft set up a new campus in Noida very recently, right? So because they are looking at India as a place where business can be done, where more business can be done, right? So this is a good question to ask, and I mean this is a good factor to consider, and it will come under this. I think this will come under economic conditions of
Yes,
that
economic
place.
conditions will come
Yeah.
under, and also adding on to that Ashwin's point, the ROI which India offers and the labor cost is really cheap in India, so that makes it a very nice place for foreign direct investments.